The Holy Gospel according to Luke. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now, Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep. But since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he had said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my Son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those days told no one of the things that they had seen. The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. So, Amy and I love Disney. Not as much as Michael loves Disney. But Michael loves Disney more than is medically advisable. But Amy and I really love Disney. It's an incredible corporation. I mean, the parks are great, the service is great, the attention to detail is great. They plan everything to the nth degree. I remember being at a synod assembly that was organized by Disney, on Disney property. And they said from the moment you enter the park, everything you see and everything you interact with is thought through for countless hours and made as good as it possibly can be. They said, "Is the same true of your church?" Sort of. But it makes you think. Then they told us that they believe the customer is right. They trust the customer, their guests. So when word reached Disney of a whole bunch of people in the Magic Kingdom asking what seemed to be the dumbest question ever, any other corporation would have just said, "Well, our guests are dumb." Disney said, "No, there must be more to it." Now, I hear you ask, what was the dumbest question ever? Okay, I can imagine you asking me that. Here's the dumbest question that was repeatedly asked by guests of staff at the Magic Kingdom year after year after year. You ready? What time is the 3 o'clock parade? Now you and I might say, Disney trusts their guests. So Disney wanted to find out what was going on. So they asked their staff to ask the guests. What do you mean? And they said it very nicely. What they discovered is that the guests that were asking that question were not actually asking what time the 3 o'clock parade was. That's what they said, but that's not what they meant. What they meant was, what time does the 3 o'clock parade reach here? I don't want to stand here longer than I need to, but I also don't want to go away, come back, and have nowhere to stand. So I'm not quite sure what direction they come in, but what time does the 3 o'clock parade reach at this point? That's what they meant. Something that seemed so crazy to ask They simply lacked the words to ask what they meant to ask. You know I give Peter a hard time. He's my favorite disciple because he's almost never right. And in fact, upon occasion, he's spectacularly wrong. And I like that. I have a certain empathy for that. In part because I know I'm far from perfect, and to see someone who is that great hero of the faith, the rock upon which I will build my church, said Jesus, it gives me hope. If Peter's all right, maybe I'm all right. If Peter can get his act together, maybe I can get my act together. But sometimes we overplay that. Sometimes we see Peter's dim-wittedness and slowness, pig-headedness, even in places where it isn't on display. Preacher after preacher has pointed out how astoundingly wrong Peter is upon the mountain, the Mount of the Transfiguration. But I want to preach in favor of Peter today. So, picture the scene. It says 8 days after this happened. Well, that makes you think what happened 8 days previously. 8 days previously was when Jesus asked, who do people say that I am? And he got in response from his disciples a whole litany. You know, Moses, the prophet. And Jesus looks Peter in the eye and says, but who do you say that I am? And Peter says, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. It was Peter's great confession of faith. That just happened a few days ago. After that, Jesus promised the disciples, there are people here now who will not fall asleep until they see the kingdom of God. So you can imagine what a spiritual high Peter is on. I finally got it right. I finally nailed it. I got the right answer at last. I made my confession of faith. Now what can possibly go wrong? I've been promised that I may see the kingdom of God before I even die. This is great. Imagine that spiritual high. I've done it. I'm right. I'm with the program. And then they go up the mountain. As one scholar said, well, let me just get this quote right rather than make it up. Leaving the space of ordinary events. Isn't that a great turn of phrase? In the New Testament, as in the Old, climbing a mountain took you away from the ordinariness of life. You were kind of getting closer to heaven, closer to God. It was, yes, I know people built fortresses on top of mountains because it was safe, but people also went to the top of mountains to pray and to meditate and to be apart from the hustle and bustle of life. It's a place where people go to think and to speak to God, and as you do it, as you ascend, you leave those earthly cares behind. You quite literally leave the space of ordinary events. They get to the top of the mountain, and the disciples are tired. They're probably spiritually exhausted, emotionally spent, and drowsy. They just want to rest. And then fantastic things happen. Jesus is transfigured. You see him in his glory. You will not see Jesus in his glory again until his resurrection. That's what I meant when I spoke to the kids about Jesus in his transfiguration, not to be pretending to be something that he isn't, but revealing what he isn't yet. He isn't yet the glorious, resurrected, ascended Lord. And he's joined by Moses and Elijah, and you'll have heard hundreds of times since your childhood in church that Moses represents the law and Elijah represents the prophets. All of the promise of the Hebrew scriptures are met on top of the mountain when they stand next to the Messiah. Now, there's a Greek word translated as leave or depart. And this is where I hope to explain to you what's going on in Peter's head and heart. Because in English we translate that Greek word as leave, go away. And that is what it means, that's the root sense of it. But it's a very particular Greek word. There are other Greek words that just mean off they go. So we have this image of Moses and Elijah just disappearing, and they're gone, and Peter saying, But that Greek word actually means to gradually disappear, to gradually take your leave. Now, I don't know what's precisely meant, but I can just imagine them starting to fade away. Peter is exhausted, but on a spiritual high. The greatest thing has happened before his eyes that will happen before his eyes until the resurrection. And now the figures are starting to fade, and he knows that he's losing them. And he says, don't go. I want to suggest to you that this isn't a Peter who is getting the wrong end of the stick. This is the most human Peter you'll ever see. I will not ask for a show of hands, but I know that this space is full of people who have watched things they love slowly fade away. I know that this room is full of people who have lost things that meant the world to them and had to watch as they just disappear slowly out of sight. I know that this room is full of people who have reached out in love and from the bottom of their hearts and the depths of their souls have said, no, don't go. Stay a while. What can I do to make you stay? This is a very human Peter. Don't go. Stay with me. I need you here. What can I do to keep you here? What can I do so that this last moment will last as long as possible? No, Peter's not messing up. He's speaking for every broken-hearted person. And then there's another word that's quite particular. Moses and Elijah are talking to Jesus about his departure. Again, it's one of those great English words, departure. To leave for, to leave from. But there's a particular word behind that word, departure. The word that's actually used in the original language is exodus. To depart. To leave. Except in the language of faith, exodus has so many connotations beyond simply to go or to leave. In the book of Exodus, we hear about the exodus of God's people from slavery in Egypt to freedom. They were on a 40-year journey toward the land of destiny. At this point in Luke's Gospel, the Galilean ministry is ended. Jesus' time in his own countryside. That Galilean countryside of rolling hills and green and purple-coloured mountains that looks so amazingly like Scotland, you would not believe it. I posted that on Facebook. It was one of the few posts I made on my pilgrimage. Photographs of lochs and mountains and what looked like purple heather. And I said, this is Galilee. And many of my friends in Scotland said, you're kidding, it looks like home. I said, in many ways it is home. Jesus is on his home turf. And at this point in Luke's Gospel, the Galilean ministry is about to end. There are going to be 10 long chapters of Jesus' journey from Galilee to Jerusalem. From the moment in chapter 9 that he says, and I'm setting my face for Jerusalem, to the moment in chapter 19 where he reaches the gates of the city. But now, This is the turning point. The Galilean ministry is over, and Jesus is walking towards Jerusalem. And so this exodus could mean any number of things, but just as the people of God in their exodus left Egypt on a journey to the land of destiny, now Jesus is on a journey from Galilee to the city of destiny. And it's a dangerous city, for as Jesus himself says when he gets there, it's the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. His exodus is a journey of destiny. And God the Father speaks. Remember a few weeks ago we had the baptism of Jesus. That was the last time we heard God the Father speak. The heavens were opened. The Holy Spirit descended in bodily form like a dove, and the Father says, "This is my Son, my beloved, in whom I am well pleased." Now the Father speaks again, but there's a different audience. "You are my Son." In the baptism of Jesus, the Father's voice speaks to Jesus. "You are my Son." Now the voice of God speaks to the disciples, the ones who are going to continue Jesus' ministry. "This is my Son. This is my Son, my chosen." Listen to him. And although it's not in the text, boy, isn't it implied, listen to him while you have the chance. The implication, of course, is you have listened to Moses and Elijah, now listen to my Son. But implicit, you will not have long to hear him. Listen to him while you can. And just as Jesus' ministry from day one in his baptism fills him with the power of the Spirit to fulfill the ministry, now he is filled again with the Spirit of the power as he journeys to Jerusalem, to his fate, to drink from the cup that has been prepared for him. It's a journey that we're going to start together as a community of faith this Wednesday, on Ash Wednesday. And so this tired, terrified Peter wants to stay on the mountain, having left behind the space of ordinary events. He wants to stay somewhere extraordinary, but he can't, because God is in the ordinary. I know we want to find God in a sort of rarefied atmosphere. We expect to find God behind stained glass and flickering candles and sometimes even the beautiful smell of incense, those prayers that rise up as incense, the psalmist says. We like to find God in momentous moments, moments of great meaning and import. And many people who are called to ministry don't answer the call because they're waiting for a voice like Charlton Heston's to say, "Yes, you are called, go to seminary. Yes, you are called, volunteer. Yes, you are called, give of your time and talents." And meanwhile, we miss God in the multiplicity of ordinariness, of everyday life and everyday struggles and everyday people in everyday contexts, raging against everyday injustices and everyday oppression and everyday loss of autonomy and selfhood and dignity and worth. We, like Peter, want to leave the ordinariness of life behind and enjoy the sublime. Meanwhile, God, behind the eyes of the ordinary sufferers, continue to suffer without our ever giving them a second thought. Not realizing that there is our call. There is where we must be. There is where we must serve. There is where we can pour ourselves out for the sake of the one who poured himself out for us. Yes, we withdraw. Yes, we recharge. Yes, we have our spiritual moments. As the old saying goes, you cannot pour water from an empty cup. We can't stay there, because we're called to be in the ordinariness of life, with ordinary heroes like Peter, and ordinary desires like, do not go, stay, please. But instead we come back down the mountain, back to life, back to the sphere of the ordinary. Because that's where we hear the voice of God. Not in words of rebuke or rejection, but in glorious and life-filled words of direction and hope. Jesus is the chosen one, the one to whom I, the one to whom we must listen.